Hello everyone! Welcome to our webinar FlavorWiki's Agile Research Techniques for Data-Driven Business Decisions. My name is Carla Fuentes, Branding Director at FlavorWiki, and I will be your host today. This is a pre-recorded session, and we will learn about the details of one of FlavorWiki's most interesting success cases, a plant-based milk understanding project that we performed for our client, the British beverage company Britvic. In this session, I will present briefly what is FlavorWiki and how we help food and beverage companies to obtain valuable insights from real consumers. After that, we will watch the details of the plant-based milk understanding case. And at the end, we will see a discussion session held by FlavorWiki CEO Daniel Protz and our Head of Consumer Insights, Luis Sepulveda, where they share their experience during the development of the project. Thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoy the session. About FlavorWiki. What can FlavorWiki do? There are two ways in which FlavorWiki helps food and ingredient companies to obtain valuable insights. We license a software as a service platform that allows companies to have control over the studies they wish to perform. You can access all statistical tools and you are free to run as many studies as you need. The intuitive design of the software and its powerful analytics makes it an agile and flexible tool, allowing for fast iterations and results. Also, we perform consumer research studies as needed by our clients. This is a project-based service that adapts to specific objectives. We can capture sensory and hedonic drivers as well as purchase information from users in our community worldwide. By using the FlavorWiki technology, we can offer this service as a cost-effective and fast solution for obtaining reliable consumer intelligence. Our platform is completely digital and powered by AI and machine learning. We have a community of testers worldwide that we leverage for market research studies of various types for different companies. All the analytics are performed inside our software platform and can be done in real time. The platform allows to perform in an agile way both quantitative and qualitative studies. Our solutions are tailor-fit for different segments of the industry, including consumer good companies, suppliers and distributors, and online retailers. The company was founded in 2017 and services more than 40 multinational companies in its portfolio. We work in 35 countries around the world and run projects in 24 different languages. We have 48 team members distributed around the globe and offices located in Switzerland, the United States, and Canada. Our team draws mostly from the ingredients industry as well as the consumer insights and packaged goods industry and from the digital space. We work for global well-known brands as well as startups in the food and beverage space. Our technology and services are built to support product development and innovation in order to create the products that consumers love. We offer digital solutions throughout the whole value chain, from CPG companies and B2C food manufacturers to suppliers and distributors like flavor houses and ingredient companies, and up to retailers and online sellers. Our capabilities include market mappings, competitive benchmarkings, shopping behavior analysis, fast digital surveys, concept, package, and message testing, post-launch and quality check, qualitative solutions, in-home sample assessments, among others. What is also unique about our capabilities is that we can capture both sensory information and hedonic information using our AI during the same test. As an operator of the FlavorWiki software, you will have access to powerful analytics and statistical tools right in the dashboard. You can create data cuts at any time, import external data you might have from past studies or third-party platforms, build custom models, and share reports in real time with colleagues or customers. The customizable reporting provides ready-to-use templates to present results in a fast and easy way. No more wasting time preparing PowerPoint slides or PDF reports. You could also white label the software with your company's brand. Now let's watch a presentation of the Plant-Based Milk Understanding project, performed by FlavorWiki for the beverage company Britvic. Before we start, we would like to state that FlavorWiki was granted authorization by Britvic to disclose the details of this project in order to be used with informative, promotional, and educational purposes. All research projects performed by FlavorWiki are strictly confidential and they are never distributed to the public or third-party entities. The objective of this project and Britvic's goal with this study was to understand consumer liking within the non-dairy milk category in the United Kingdom, and also understand the performance of Plenish brand non-dairy products versus key competitors. This study was performed in early 2021, and the non-dairy milk category was rapidly growing not just in the UK but globally. In 2019 alone, plant-based milks generated £12.3 billion in sales, with a projected growth to £30 billion by 2025. In the UK, British consumers spent an estimated of £146 million on oat milk in 2020, up from £74 million in 2019. Oat milk's strong growth surpassed almond to take the top spot among plant-based milks for the first time. In 2020, the whole category in the UK accounted sales for £3,094 million, which is 32% more than the previous year. As of last year, 1 in 3 people in the UK are current consumers of plant-based milks. In young individuals from 25 to 44 years old, this statistics increases to 2 out of 5 individuals. What was special about this project for both Britvic and FlavorWiki? This was a time-sensitive project. Britvic was in need of obtaining the results in under 2 weeks, and the whole project, from the moment FlavorWiki received the brief and up to the final delivery of the report, took 12 days. Britvic is an experienced soft drinks company, but the non-dairy milk category was unknown territory for them, so a wide and holistic research was needed. The project was highly confidential and it included very few stakeholders from the high management at Britvic, as the company was going through time-sensitive acquisition negotiations. The test approach. For this study, 10 plant-based milk products were evaluated, 5 within the almond milk flavor category and 5 in the oat milk flavor category. Each group consisted of 1 Plenish product and 4 of the principal competitors for that category in the UK market. How did FlavorWiki conduct the study? Once the online survey is launched, we invite users from our own community to sign into the platform and participate in the new study. We recruit new users via online marketing campaigns and sharing promotions. The user is asked to go to the store or online and buy the product they want to taste. The questionnaire can be accessed online, no download required. Then, while at home, the user is invited to consume the product and respond to the online survey, following the instructions provided in the app. In real time, the client can access the results inside the FlavorWiki platform. For every project, FlavorWiki guarantees that 70% of the users will be new to the platform, avoiding the so-called expert tasters and assuring natural and naive responses. The methodology that was used in this project was branded monadic, meaning that the consumers were allowed to taste only one product and they were allowed to choose the brand they preferred to taste. FlavorWiki was asked to recruit 200 tasters for each product, per flavor, so it was a total of 1,000 consumers for the almond products and 1,000 consumers for the oat products. The consumer profile was 70% female, 30% male, 45% were consumers between 18 and 34 years old, and 50% were between 35 and 65 years old. All of them were regular consumers of non-dairy milks at least once every 2 months. Each consumer was asked to choose one plant-based product, and they needed to taste it both neat or plain, meaning just the liquid in a clear, clean glass, and in application, the liquid with cereal or porridge. For this study, Britvic needed to consider a special consumer category called foodie classification. FlavorWiki provided to the users a range of statements related to the consumer attitude towards food, and they were asked to strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree to each statement. This resulted in a categorization of the users between committed foodie, weekend foodie, or non-foodie. As a result from the study, we discovered that there were key attributes in the Plenish product that were perceived as weaker than those of the competition. For Plenish almond, the attributes flavor strength, sweetness, nuttiness, mouthfeel, and creaminess were perceived as too weak by more than 26% of the tasters. For sweetness, 42% of the users thought that the product was not sweet enough. 28% said that the nutty flavor in the product was too weak, as well as the mouthfeel, rated too weak by 37% of the tasters. For creaminess, the result was that the product was not creamy enough by 43% of the users. For Plenish oat, the attributes color, sweetness, mouthfeel, and creaminess were perceived as weaker. 24% of tasters claimed that the color was too dark. 25% said that the product was not sweet enough. Mouthfeel was perceived as too weak by 37% of the tasters, and up to 40% of them said that the product was not creamy enough. Additional learnings from the study were that Plenish was the least preferred option when asked about package liking. In a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is dislike extremely and 10 is like extremely, Plenish scored a 7 for their almond flavor and a 6.8 for their oat flavor. Recently, Plenish announced a complete rebrand of the plant-based products as a result from this consumer study. Our recommendations to the client, based on the results obtained from the study, were to move to a thicker and more creamy mouthfeel profile for both products, move to a sweeter flavor profile also for both products, and a complete redesign of the packaging to improve pack standout and liking. Outcome of the study. In the first quarter of 2021, Britvic announced the acquisition of Plenish, having obtained all the key information to upgrade the product's profile to increase liking. Britvic obtained a better understanding of the non-dairy milk category in a highly competitive and growing market. Early this year, Plenish was completely rebranded as stated in a press release published mid-March this year. Plenish now has the vision of becoming the #1 premium plant-based drinks brand, as it was shared by their management in a communication related to the recent rebranding. Now that we have presented the details of the case, I would like to invite FlavorWiki's CEO Daniel Protz and FlavorWiki's Head of Consumer Insights, Luinei Sepulveda, to a casual discussion about their experience during this consumer study. Hello, Daniel, Luinei. Thank you very much for joining this session. Do you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Sure, thanks for having us. I'm Daniel Protz. I'm the founder and CEO of FlavorWiki, based in Zurich, Switzerland. My background is in finance and basically digital and data-driven modeling in the financial industry. But the last role that I had before starting FlavorWiki in 2017 was head of operations for a major e-commerce retailer based in Europe. Right now sitting in Zurich, which is where I live, and glad to be here.
Hi, my name is Luine Sepulveda. Based in Toronto, Canada. I've been with the FlavorWiki family for over 2 years now. And before moving to Canada, I was in Venezuela working for P&G, and my background is in consumer understanding and food technology.
Great. Do you mind if I start asking you some questions about the case that we just saw?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Can you tell me a bit of what was the situation at Britvic at the time of the study?
So I'll take that one. We were called in January 2021. We had already done some work for Britvic in 2020, and it was a pretty urgent ask, given that it was just after the first of the year. I think it was even still like the New Year's break, and the client wanted us to do a pretty large assessment of the plant-based milk market. They at the time they were not able to tell us what the real kind of reason behind this study was, but they knew that they needed to get it done almost immediately. And literally, I think as you noted in the case, it took us about 12 days to finish the whole thing from the time we got the brief. So luckily the timing was just great, and we were able to deliver to them what they needed on time. And I think that they made some good decisions about their acquisition as a result.
And what is it exactly that they needed to understand?
So I actually worked a fair amount in M&A myself prior to FlavorWiki. I think that what they were looking to understand is, were they making a decision to make an acquisition of Plenish, which made sense given its competitive position in the market, i.e. did people like the product, and was it something that they felt that they could develop more as a brand. I think Plenish was just a startup, although it was a brand that was known in the UK. It definitely wasn't big, and so they wanted to confirm that that the product could be successful, but they also wanted to understand what they could do to potentially improve it, and what the potential of the product was in the marketplace if they were to put more energy into branding and advertising, etc., and what they were looking to do. And I don't know the exact details of how the acquisition was going down at that time, if there was other bidders or what the situation was. We're not privy to that. But usually these things are very time sensitive. You need to sign documents, and once you sign them, you're pretty much committed. And so from the perspective of learning, how the consumer was reacting to the product, that's not something which due diligence would have allowed you to back out on, right? So you had to make that decision, and you'd have to live with it. If you find some sort of financial irregularities, sometimes you can get out of a transaction like that. But I don't think that if you're buying a food product, you can say, well, I changed my mind because people don't like it. So they really needed to have the data quickly.
And what do you think Britvic came to FlavorWiki for this project?
Well, we had the fortune of working with them in 2020 on several different things. I think they saw the speed that we could execute at, and I think that they saw that we could get a lot of data quickly. I mean, we're not really constrained by the number of people that participate in a study, so we didn't have to go through all of the setup of a central location test with consumers for consumer liking. We really could go for doing 10 products, 12 products, 8 products. I mean, at one point we were discussing 12. At one point we were discussing 8. It all would have been more or less the same for us. So I think that was basically the reason they came to us, is because doing it another way just wouldn't have been possible in the time frame. I don't think that it would have been feasible for another agency to do it and get the tasting information and have the consumer actually taste the product.
Okay. In terms of the actual execution of the project, maybe Luine, you can answer this one. What was the recruit like for this project?
So we look for having obviously consumer of plant-based milk, but at least once every 2 months, but also people that consume dairy milk, because the part of the process was to compare versus dairy milk. Mostly between 18 to 65 years old, And we were aiming to have 50-50 female male, but because we have a lot of people getting interested, we end up having 70% female and 30% male. And obviously people that were not rejectors of almond flavor or oat flavor. Those are like the basic recruitment criteria that we use.
Perfect. Yeah.
And if I recall, I think we ended up with well more information or responses than we needed. I can't recall exactly, Luane. Maybe you remember how that happened, but I think that there was in one case we had a couple of hundred more responses than we required, which is what you noted about the extra interest, right?
Yeah, because typically we're very restricted with the criteria that the client wants, but because of this speed, we were allowing people that were not as frequent users of plant-based milk, and then at the end decided if we were gonna have everyone as part of the data set or not. And then I think that we have an extra quota of people under 3 months or so. That is specific, I don't remember, but for sure we have users of this category, which was the most important for them to understand if they acquire this, are the people gonna like it or not.
Yeah, now I'm remembering what happened in that regard too, is that they were, again, because of the speed, we weren't really quite sure, and they weren't quite sure about how restricted they wanted to be. So we just basically made a deal. We said, look, let's just open it up. And if more people respond than we need, we'll just charge you for the incentive of the product cost. And we can just have the data, and if we use it, great. If we don't, we don't use it, that's pretty typical with projects that we run. We don't usually let them run so viral like that, because we want to, of course, limit the costs, and we don't need all of that data. But in this case, the client was just, speed was more important, so they were willing to just kind of open up the floodgates and let as many folks in as we could. And I think in the end that was pretty beneficial. We were able to really curate the data that we used.
And what was the user asked to do?
They needed to taste one of the products. They can choose which one they prefer to do the tasting, and they have two options: either doing the whole tasting neat or by itself without anything, just in a glass, or to use it on an application. Could have been cereal, porridge, oat. And after that, they were given the chance of doing the other one that they didn't choose. And this was optional and additional to the whole process. And what happened at the end is that most of everyone decided to do the second tasting. And that also allowed us to have extra data that was not the original part of the design. We thought at the beginning we were only going to have 50% of the users do the second tasting, and we end up having way more. So we have the two sets of the monadic response, which is the first tasting they did, and then the second tasting, which is for the other either application or need, depending on what they chose first.
Yeah, bringing back memories. What almost inevitably happens with these projects, I think it happens in many that we do, particularly things that are like more ad hoc like this, is that the design will change a little bit as we're getting ready to go to field. And that's exactly what happened here as well, is that, we had everything ready to go. I think it was only neat application, or pretty sure it was. And then the client came and said, hey, look, we also want to make sure they test it in cereal because the marketing director thinks this is important, etc. And so we basically just pivoted to allow people to do both. And then we were allowing them to kind of swap. Either they had to do neat first or porridge first. And there was a fair amount of work to do to organize the data correctly. But in the end, we just ended up with loads of responses, which was, I think that was in the end just super beneficial. But the client was super flexible in this regard too. Like we spent a fair amount of time with them, I think a couple of afternoons in completion, just getting the things fielded as quickly as we could.
And we saw in the case that there was this special classification of users, this foodie classification. Can you explain a bit what was this about?
So that's a classification from the client. We have a lot of clients that come with those type of classification that are internal, and they're depending on their specific demographic or profile that they're looking for. In this case, it was a series of 10 statements, and then depending how many either one answer strongly agree, then they will get classified either as a committed foodie or weekend foodie or non-foodie. And then they will understand how those classifications respond to the, the liking of each of those products. But it's not uncommon. We see that a lot of those type of classifications depending on the category. So that all gives is how much each user is involved in each of those categories, especially for food.
Okay. And you just mentioned how you were able to go over quota on the number of users. How did FlavorWiki manage to recruit almost 3,000 consumers to complete the project in such a short period of time?
Well, first of all, the UK it's a pretty big market for us, so we have a pretty active community in this regard. But one of the main things that we do in the way that we recruit is we encourage a lot of social sharing, and people find it fun. And I was amazed. I still am amazed, but in 2021, I was very impressed by this and all the plant-based work we did. People are just very interested in the product. I think that there's a lot of a high level of engagement of people trying it and using it on some level. I think some of the statistics you might have cited in the case speak to this. So I think there's a lot of users out there about it, and you give them a chance to have a bit of a voice in this, and we find that people get excited about it. And as I said, one of the problems we have when we do these recruits is we have too many people sign up, and we typically have to constrain that. We can't let it go viral because then you have way too many responses and it becomes too costly. But in this case, because speed was so important, we just sort of let it run, right? And that's what created the speed. And you can see like it starts and it just goes, it just runs up in terms of the engagement and the people that are doing it. So I think that's our technique of doing this type of recruit. It's a lot more like online marketing or kind of controlling a community or I used a lot of these techniques when I was in e-commerce, and it works very well when you want to get a lot of users engaged. It's hard sometimes to cut it off at the right moment to not get too much data. But in this case, we didn't have to worry about it, so that was nice.
And in terms of challenges, do you remember something that was specifically difficult to manage? I don't know, was the product widely available? Do you remember having any problems?
Do you remember, Luane? There's almost always one product that's hard to find in any of
Yeah,
these.
I don't think that we have many issues in this case. I think the biggest challenge was that some of the products, especially for oat, they have like different varieties. So we have to give the like clear information to the user so they know which one they need to buy. So that's the only thing that I remember, that we have to make sure that they are using the correct one. But overall, I think they were widely available. I don't think that we have any issues in that regard.
I do remember the data cleaning being a little bit challenging because of this option to do either the meat or the porridge afterwards. So normally people do things in a similar kind of order, and then our system basically just manages doing the combination and comparison of the information. But we had to do a little bit more manual data cleaning, but that wasn't that difficult either. I think for the most part it was just the design that took a little bit of extra effort for the speed. Right. So
Okay,
design's always the critical part, right? It's like, you can take one day to write the whole thing, or you can take, a month. And in this case, the client was obviously motivated and came quickly. So.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the data because I wanted to ask you, how is the way in which FlavorWiki analyzes the data?
So there's a couple of things that we do in general, right? And there's a couple of things that I think that were relevant for this project. I mean, one thing that we specialize in is we have a special way of answering or asking a particular question using a paired response that allows us to get a kind of a feature picture. It's a bit of a sensoric profile. You know, we keep careful. It's not exactly a train panel profile, but it's very close. And you know, with about 8 to 12 attributes. And we use this methodology to build a picture of the, you know, taste, flavor, mouthfeel, texture. And I think in this case, of course, these are key things that the client was focused on, which is, you know, how does the profile of the product compare to others? And then how does the consumer react to that product? So I think we made very liberal use of that in this particular study. And then we made liberal use of these kind of jar questions and other comparative related questions to then build what we call an ideal profile. It's basically like a combination of the information that's coming out of those responses together with liking information to make a profile which we believe is statistically robust of, hey, look, this is the best one or would be the best one if it were to exist. And that's, you know, what's important, I think, for the customer or our customer to be able to say, okay, our product is doing really well and it has the best profile and it seems to be the winning one, or ours is not doing well and, you know, here's how we can improve it. I think in this case with Plenish, it wasn't the best one, the best profile, but there were some clear ways in which it could be improved to perform better, and that's nice to see. I mean, a lot of times when clients have the product and it's winning, and it's like, oh, that's the best in the market, great, that's what we expect. That's, you know, then there's not much more to do. But when it's a case where when there's things that you can do that are actionable, that's interesting.
I think the other important thing about this case is that because we have the application, that was something else that was very important to them. Because once you apply this to either porridge or oat, people can add whatever they wanted. The idea was for them to use it as they will normally use it. And that's going to have an impact on their perception of flavor, texture. So that was something else that was also important for them. And that's not typical on this type of study. You usually only have the product itself because you want to remove that effect of the other things that people are adding in their routine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And from the results that were obtained, what were the final recommendations or conclusions?
Well, a big one was in package. It was very clear that the package was not a very attractive one in comparison to the set of the other products. And the other key elements were sweetness was one that was very important to adjust. And part of that mouthfeel of that creaminess that I think you mentioned it before, that were not being perceived as good by a high percentage of consumers. So we understand that there's always going to be a percentage that's going to think that any of these attributes are either too low or too high. But when that percentage gets closer to a certain level, and in this case, there were even numbers around 40%, that's a clear indication that people don't like it. And therefore, that's going to have an effect on either purchase intent or the overall liking of the product.
Okay. And can you tell me about Plenish today? How do you think the brand has evolved since the moment of the study?
Well, we saw that the package, the formula, they did a big change. And that's something that we don't typically see, at least unless you're in the market or you won't see it as quickly. I think that once they acquire the brand, they move really fast to make it different and to make it better for consumers. And that's a direct effect of the result. So you could see that call to action immediately. So that's a good thing.
I think they even wrote about it in a couple of posts on their website. It seems to me that brand got a bit of an overhaul, particularly visually and in the product. We were told that a lot of the data that we collected was useful in that. I'm sure they did additional work internally with their panels and things, but yeah, it seems to be that they've done an integration into their product portfolio, and I don't think that they were in the category beforehand. You know, they're not known, or were not known for this type of a product category, so it was something new for them too.
Yeah.
What can you say about how FlavorWiki feels after being part of this project with Pritik?
Well, I think it's exciting because you don't see it every day. You're, as a supplier, you're giving recommendations and you always see that action to be taken, but you're not part of those actions. And you don't even know if they're able to do them just because of budget. You don't really know anything after a project is complete. You part ways, or even continue with the same client, even the same person in a different project, and you don't know what happened to the previous one. So in this case, it was nice to see that some of those recommendations were, made into what the product is today.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I think it's cool to see a continuation of the work you're doing. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, from my point of view as a supplier, we should be here to help companies make great commercial products that people love. And that's more than just sort of one moment in time getting some information and some data. So it's nice to have a customer sort of see you as a partner in their decision-making process. And of course, there's a lot of other things that go into that process. But for me, that's where we would like to position ourselves as a company, you know, helping solve commercial problems. Yes, we're doing research. Yes, we have to have capabilities to do that. But, you know, at the end of the day, really the point of being a company that produces food products is to make products that people like and consume and that are healthy. And then, you know, you make profit from that at some point, of course. You know, it's a for-profit industry. But yeah, that was great for us. I think that that's super interesting. And we're really happy that they were also willing to let us share a bit about this. It's an exciting category, right? As a supplier, you also sometimes feel left behind because you're not producing one of these products, right? And so playing a role in helping them evolve in the market is nice. It's nice to be there and do that. So.
Great. Thank you very much. We are out of time, and I appreciate you being in this session. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
And that's it. Thank you all for joining, and see you next time.